Good morning. We're speaking to you today against the backdrop of some really significant and rapidly developing current events across the region and, well, the country.
Good morning.
And, in the spirit of those classic 1960s evening news broadcasts, we are really here to deliver a clear, completely factual, and professional assessment of the situation at hand.
Exactly. No sensationalism, just the facts.
Right. We will look at the facts, the differing perspectives, and the possible courses of action. And we're going to do this without bias and certainly without generating unnecessary fear.
Which is so important right now.
It really is. Now, this deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI, and the intelligence analysis you are about to hear is actually generated by Stylo News, which is the premier AI-powered news application.
Right. And let's establish the parameters for today's intelligence briefing before we jump in.
Good idea. The title of our deep dive today is Middle East Crisis Update. The region of focus is obviously the Middle East, and today's date is the 16th of June, 2026.
And we should mention this is a special 2-week analysis of this ongoing multi-front crisis.
Yeah, exactly. And to give you, the listener, a sense of how we are actually gathering all this information, it's worth explaining the mechanics behind Stylo News for a second.
Yeah, I mean, the application that you might use on your phone to aggregate headlines, it's actually the consumer version of a highly sophisticated software architecture called Stylo Intel Ops.
Right.
And that enterprise version, well, it's currently utilized for global operations by governments, the military, and, major international businesses.
Which means that by joining us today for this deep dive, you are getting this unique behind-the-scenes access to the exact same caliber of intelligence gathering tools that are designed to support global decision makers.
It's a pretty incredible tool to have at your disposal.
It really is. So our mission today is to impartially review 3 interconnected spheres of influence. First, we have Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Second, we're going to look at the diplomatic and military posture of the United States and its regional partners. And third, the current operational realities for Israel.
And I think we really need to frame this properly from the start. I mean, these are not isolated tactical events.
No, not at all.
A rocket fired in Lebanon or a drone launched from Yemen. These are interconnected strategic, political, and economic challenges.
Yeah.
They dictate regional stability, they shift global energy markets, and they completely alter international diplomacy.
So to understand this massive electrical grid of Middle Eastern security, we first have to look at the actors who are, well, actively applying the voltage.
I like that analogy.
Right. So can Iran and its regional partners preserve their military capabilities and impose costs on their adversaries? Let's look at the localized front with Hamas first. The word from the recent disarmament talks has essentially been a flat no.
Well, I would frame it as a conditional no.
A conditional no.
Yeah, which, practically serves the exact same purpose. Based on the latest Stylo Intel Ops estimates, Hamas is highly unlikely to disarm voluntarily.
Okay.
The mechanics of their negotiation strategy, they rely almost entirely on delay.
Right, stalling.
Exactly. They are tying any prospect of disarmament to these maximalist political conditions. Specifically, a full Israeli military withdrawal from all territories and a guaranteed irreversible 2-state solution.
But I have to ask about the underlying logic there. I mean, why would they ever agree to disarm if those weapons are literally the only political leverage they actually hold right now?
They likely won't, and honestly, that is the core of the deadlock. By setting demands that they know are currently completely unacceptable to the Israeli government, they avoid walking away from the negotiating table.
Right, they stay in the game.
Yeah, while effectively ensuring that no verifiable disarmament framework can actually be implemented. It's a calculated stall tactic.
Which brings us to Tehran, the main power station in this grid we're talking about. We're seeing a very strange dual-track approach from Iran right now.
Very strange, yeah.
Domestically, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei has been issuing this series of selective prisoner pardons. Walk us through how this works mechanically. Because on the surface, it looks like an olive branch.
It does look like that, but it is a carefully engineered facade of clemency.
Really?
Yeah. By pardoning a specific subset of, say, non-political prisoners or minor offenders, The regime alleviates the immense overcrowding in their prison system.
Oh, sure.
And at the same time, it projects a softer image internationally. However, they intentionally exclude key political dissidents and protest leaders.
Wow. Okay, so it's calculated.
Highly. This allows them to release the pressure valve of domestic anger just enough to prevent an explosion, while keeping their iron grip on internal security completely intact.
And while they are releasing pressure at home, they are aggressively dialing it up regionally. I mean, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, they're actively warning commercial vessels and maintaining a highly contested environment right in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, because the broader strategy relies entirely on calibrated coercion. Iran is simultaneously engaged in high-level diplomacy with the United States in Geneva, while using the IRGC to remind the globe that they can basically choke off a significant percentage of the world's daily oil supply at a moment's notice.
Which is terrifying for the global markets.
Absolutely. They are using their regional partners to maintain pressure without triggering a full-scale, uncontrolled war that might draw direct U.S. strikes on Iranian soil.
Right. I want to use an analogy here to sort of make sense of this strategic flexibility. It seems like Iran's network of regional partners operates a lot like a series of circuit breakers in a house.
Okay, yeah. Follow that out.
Well, Tehran can use these breakers,
Yeah.
Hezbollah and Lebanon to the north, the Houthis in Yemen to the south, to absorb diplomatic shocks and basically apply remote military pressure. It allows them to overload their adversaries' defenses without ever sending a dangerous surge of electricity back to the main power station in Tehran.
That's actually a really precise way to look at it.
But the obvious flaw in that system is, well, what happens when the individual circuit breakers start catching fire? I mean, Hezbollah is under relentless airstrikes right now, and the Houthis are dealing with Western naval coalitions. How sustainable is this?
The sustainability is incredibly precarious because it relies on perfect calibration, and as we know, war is rarely perfect.
Right.
If Hezbollah suffers catastrophic leadership losses, or, if Israeli ground operations in Lebanon cross some undeclared red line, those circuit breakers might just fail.
And then what?
At that point, Iran faces a massive dilemma. Do they let their most valuable deterrent force be destroyed, or do they respond directly and risk the very war they've been trying to avoid? It is a highly volatile equilibrium.
So if Iran is actively using these proxy circuit breakers to essentially short-circuit the region, how exactly is the United States trying to repair the grid?
Well, that's the big question.
Yeah, and that leads us directly to the diplomatic scramble currently unfolding, which is our second line of analysis. Can the U.S. and allied Middle Eastern nations effectively degrade Iran's military capabilities, restore deterrence, and kind of drag everyone back to the diplomatic table?
The primary tool for that repair right now is this reported United States-Iran memorandum. It's a peace framework that was reached around June 14th.
Right.
And this framework is ambitious. I mean, it aims at military de-escalation, addressing ongoing nuclear issues, and crucially, reopening the Strait of Hormuz to secure those global energy markets you mentioned.
And the political momentum behind this is massive. U.S. President Donald Trump is actively promoting this forthcoming agreement. He's highlighting the United States' military capabilities to protect shipping lanes, essentially using the threat of overwhelming force as the ultimate guarantor for a formal signing ceremony in Geneva.
Which is expected around June 19th, right?
Exactly. And we are also seeing really heavy mediation from Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif alongside Qatar, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia.
The diplomatic choreography is definitely impressive. But the intelligence from the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC states, it reveals a very different reality on the ground.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait are navigating what we categorize as an unstable de-escalation.
Unstable de-escalation.
Yeah. While there's no imminent threat of direct Iranian ballistic missiles raining down on GCC capitals, the threat of proxy escalation and, notably, electronic warfare is severe.
Let's stop right there and clarify that for everyone listening. Because electronic warfare, it sounds like a science fiction concept.
It does, yeah.
When we see reports of widespread signal jamming across Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE, what does that actually mean for daily life? Are we talking about military radar arrays going blind, or is this affecting commercial systems?
It affects both, and that is exactly why it's so disruptive. The jamming involves spoofing or blocking global positioning system signals.
GPS, right.
Right. For the military, it means contested airspace where missile defense tracking becomes highly complex. But for the civilian sector, it means commercial airliners have to navigate without reliable GPS. They have to rely on older terrestrial beacon systems.
Oh, wow. That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. It means maritime shipping container tracking gets completely scrambled. It's an invisible but highly effective way to degrade the operational security of an entire region. We even saw precautionary false alarm sirens activated recently in Jordan due to the extreme nervousness regarding spillover risks.
And the physical battle space is just as active as the electronic one. In the last reporting window, U.S. forces intercepted and downed multiple Iranian drones targeting shipping in or near the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
Which brings me to a massive contradiction here.
Yeah.
We are essentially relying on the equivalent of a diplomatic docusign in Geneva to stop a maritime war. Can an electronic signature on a peace framework actually immediately neutralize kamikaze drones and GPS jamming?
I would argue it cannot, at least not instantly. There is a profound lag between diplomatic agreements and military enforcement. An agreement on paper does not instantly alter the tactical posture of an IRGC Navy fast attack boat commander.
Obviously not.
It doesn't instantly clear the backlog of shipping, and it certainly doesn't erase decades of strategic mistrust. The intelligence estimate notes that while the strait is open enough for limited, highly insured transit, it is not secure enough to be considered normalized.
It's still a war zone.
Basically, diplomacy moves at the speed of light, maritime security moves at the speed of a cargo ship.
That's a great way to put it. Which means for you, the listener, the cost of the goods you buy and the fuel you use is still held hostage by that gap between the pen and the sword.
Exactly.
And while the diplomats talk in Geneva and Cairo, the physical reality is entirely different on our third line of analysis. Israel. Can Israel continue to protect its population while trying to shape conditions that encourage Hamas and Hezbollah into a sustainable peace arrangement?
The operational environment there is incredibly severe. In Gaza, despite an official ceasefire that was brokered by the U.S. back in October 2025, intense military operations continue.
Yeah.
And impartially reporting the data provided here, Gaza's health ministry states the Palestinian death toll has now surpassed 73,000 since the conflict initially escalated in 2023.
And the localized violence is daily. Israeli airstrikes recently targeted areas, including the Jabalia refugee camp, Nusrat, and Gaza City.
Right.
United States diplomat Nikolay Mladenov has explicitly noted that the absolute deadlock over Hamas's refusal to disarm is the primary barrier to any meaningful reconstruction or political resolution.
It's a total stalemate.
But let's look at the mechanics of this. The Israeli government maintains these operations are precision strikes targeting Hamas militants. How do we reconcile the concept of precision strikes with a death toll of 73,000 and widespread infrastructure destruction?
Well, the discrepancy comes down to the nature of the battlefield and the opposing strategies involved. The Israeli government, under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, they operate on a zero-tolerance policy for entrenched threats. Their perspective is that Hamas intentionally embeds its command centers, weapon depots, and fighters within civilian infrastructure.
Right, the human shield argument.
Right.
Yeah.
Therefore, neutralizing the militant threat inherently requires striking civilian areas. Conversely, Palestinian factions view these continued operations not as precision security measures, but as a collective punishment that violates their sovereign territory and the agreed-upon ceasefire conditions.
And we see an almost identical dynamic playing out on the northern front. Following Hezbollah rocket salvos into northern Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces conducted major airstrikes on Hezbollah command centers in Beirut's southern suburb, the Dahieh district.
Yep.
The Lebanese death toll from the broader conflict is currently reported at approximately 3,798. Israel maintains a high state of readiness to act in southern Lebanon to enforce security buffers.
Which, of course, Hezbollah completely rejects. They view any enforced security buffer south of the Litani River as an occupation.
Naturally.
Neither side has achieved a decisive strategic victory that forces the other to capitulate. And the result is this deeply entrenched, bloody, operational stalemate.
Which forces me to ask about the paradox of the terminology we use in the news every day. We are reporting on a ceasefire in Gaza, yet there are daily airstrikes, daily rocket salvos, and mounting casualties.
It's contradictory.
It is. Help us unpack this legal fiction. Is a fragile ceasefire in 2026 simply a diplomatic term of art for a slightly slower war of attrition?
Practically speaking, yes.
Yeah.
The October 2025 ceasefire achieved one primary objective: It ended the full-scale division-level ground maneuvers.
Okay, big shoot movements.
Exactly. But it failed to resolve any of the core political or security disputes. So what we are witnessing is a managed, low-intensity conflict.
I see.
Both sides maintain the rhetoric of a ceasefire because it allows the international community to deliver aid and avoids triggering massive international sanctions. But tactically, they are both conducting daily, targeted operations to degrade each other's capabilities. It is a ceasefire on paper, but a war of attrition on the ground.
So we have a paper peace in Geneva and a paper ceasefire in Gaza, both masking incredibly violent physical reality.
That's the reality, yes.
Having established these hard facts and the entrenched positions of the decision makers, let's turn to the public response. What do everyday people make of this, and what do these patterns suggest for the immediate future?
Well, the intelligence from Stylo Intel Ops doesn't just track military movements. It analyzes vast amounts of open-source sentiment data across social media platforms like X.
Okay, so what are people saying?
By tracking hashtags such as hashtag Israel, hashtag Beirut, and hashtag Gaza, the algorithm reveals a global public that is completely fractured on the causes of the conflict, but strangely unified in its anxieties.
The polarization is profound, but I guess it's pretty predictable.
Yeah.
Pro-Israel users heavily emphasize the nation's defensive needs, pointing to unreported terrorist attacks and framing the military actions as unavoidable responses to Hezbollah and Hamas aggression.
Right.
On the other side, critical users focus almost entirely on the high civilian death tolls, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and Lebanon, and accuse Israel of actively derailing peace agreements. There is zero middle ground on who is to blame.
None. But there is massive middle ground on what people fear. Across nearly all demographics, the data reveals a pervasive, unifying dread of a sudden, uncontrolled regional escalation.
Everyone is afraid of a wider war.
Exactly. Furthermore, there is widespread public skepticism regarding the durability of the upcoming U.S. Iran deal. The public seems to intuitively grasp that disconnect we discussed earlier.
That signing a document in Switzerland doesn't automatically disarm a militant in a tunnel in Gaza.
Precise.
It's striking how perfectly the public sentiment mirrors the diplomatic stalemate. Everyone recognizes the extreme fragility of the situation, but no one agrees on how to fix it.
Yeah.
I have to challenge the utility of this data, though. If public sentiment is this polarized and offers no unified mandate other than simply please avoid a full-scale regional war, how can global decision-makers possibly navigate a course of action that satisfies anyone?
Well, let's be blunt. They aren't trying to satisfy everyone. Decision makers are currently forced to manage the crisis rather than solve it.
Manage, not solve.
Right. When faced with an intractable historical conflict where both sides view their survival as mutually exclusive, leaders default to managing the macro-level economic impact.
Follow the money, essentially.
Essentially, they are prioritizing keeping the Strait of Hormuz open to prevent a global recession, while essentially settling for a fractured, imperfect management of the localized violence in the Levant.
Based on all of this intelligence, the macro and the micro, what are the most likely events that listeners should watch for in the coming days?
We assess 5 highly likely near-term developments.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, expect Hamas to continue employing delay tactics, refusing any verifiable disarmament framework.
Like we discussed, the stall tactics.
Exactly. Second, Iran will likely maintain its current posture, avoiding an immediate direct attack on Israel, relying instead on calibrated proxy pressure to squeeze the Geneva negotiations.
Keeping the circuit breakers active.
Right. Third, Israel will almost certainly continue targeted military operations in both Gaza and Lebanon, enforcing their security buffers through force if diplomacy fails.
And the broader global impacts.
That brings us to the fourth point. Western embassies and military forces throughout the region face an elevated threat environment. While there is no specific imminent plot currently identified, the risk of sudden proxy escalation makes those installations highly vulnerable.
Definitely something to watch.
And finally, all eyes should be on the expected June 19th U.S. Iran formal signing in Geneva. That document will dictate the tempo for the rest of the summer.
Which brings our intelligence briefing to its conclusion. The Middle East remains in a state of high volatility. As we have laid out today, there are deep, unbreakable interconnections between local tactical strikes in places like the Dahi district of Beirut and the macro-level security of global energy markets in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, they can't be separated.
They really can't. The actions of the proxies dictate the diplomacy, and the diplomacy dictates the economic security of the entire globe. We will continue to monitor these developments with the utmost objectivity, reporting the facts as they emerge.
And before we sign off, it is important to remind you about the tool that powered today's deep dive. Stylo News is available right now as a mobile and computer application.
Indeed. It allows you to step out of the noise of traditional social media and customize your own personal intelligence-style briefs.
It's so useful for cutting through the bias.
It really is.
Yeah.
It aggregates and analyzes data from hundreds of verified traditional news sources, as well as real-time public sentiment from X. If you want to understand the mechanisms behind the headlines, we urge you to take control of your information diet.
Absolutely.
You can subscribe for AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com.
And stepping back from the formal anchor desk for a moment, we really want to thank you for spending your time with us today.
We really do.
Navigating this kind of heavy, complex geopolitical information isn't always easy, and it certainly isn't light listening, but it is incredibly important.
Absolutely. We appreciate you choosing to get truly informed, to look past the surface-level talking points and understand the why and the how with us. And as we leave you today, we want to offer one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. If the upcoming U.S. Iran deal is successful, if it actually reopens the Strait of Hormuz, secures global shipping lanes, and stabilizes the global energy markets, but the localized conflicts and tragic casualties in Gaza and Lebanon continue unabated, will the international community simply price in that localized violence?
Wow.
Are we moving toward a future where global economic security is entirely decoupled from Middle Eastern peace, where the world is just content as long as the oil flows, regardless of the human cost on the ground?
It is a dark but incredibly necessary question to ask as we watch these two different tracks of diplomacy and warfare unfold.
Something to think about until we meet again. Please reach out and request topics for future deep dives, and be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.